Hi everyone, I'm Dan Evers and welcome to Positive Energy Podcast, positive stories about positive people. And Steve, our next guest is Fred Buop, someone we know pretty well from hanging out, and he hung around my dad and my parents and the Thirsty Thursday group, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but had a great career in Anderson Township, firefighter, and it's going to be great to hear his stories and talk about his journey to being a firefighter.
Well, yeah, I mean, great friend and a great family friend, and he actually gave me some props, I think, to help introduce my wife. But honestly, great career Fred had. Yeah. And that's why I want to bring him on this positive podcast. But I would like to say, since we don't have a sponsor, let's let this one be brought to you by the Old Days Firemen's Festival.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yes. Those fireman festivals were the best with the mice trap thing.
Yeah, the rat game.
Yeah, there's a whole problem with that with PETA.
But that was
down
great.
a dirty brown hole.
But it was so packed.
All the time.
You couldn't move in those places, but I mean, it just
you look forward to it
there's
so
certain festivals that you look forward to. Yeah. That was one of them, and they were like back. It was that one and another one. They were back to back. I thought, wasn't it? Was it like IHM and that one?
IHM, but back in the day, there was also Poster 18 had a festival.
Yeah,
too.
But man, I just at Fireman's Festival. So that's a good one. That's
brought to you by the Fireman's Festival.
There you go. And I think they're bringing that back, aren't they?
For one day, yeah.
Yep.
That is going to be fun.
That would be way better than the Anderson.
Are they going to do it actually at the firehouse?
No.
Where are they doing it?
I forget where they're doing
Belterra.
it at. They are in the parking lot of Belterra.
Really?
That's right.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That'd have been cool if they would have done it at the old firehouse.
That's right. Yeah.
Too big.
That'd have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
We can definitely get into that when we get to that portion.
Yes,
I can
absolutely.
give you a few good stories there.
Yes.
So go ahead.
So as we said, joining us is Fred Buop. Fred, thanks for joining us, man. We really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I'm kind of humbled with you guys asking me to do this, and of course we have been great friends. I've known the Ellis family since high school, and the Albertsons. I mean, we're just all family. We always have been. But I thanks so much for having me.
Well, and that's what this is all about, is just with all the negativity and all the crap going on in the world, and that's what we're trying to do with this podcast. And we've had some stories of people that have had some health concerns that have beat that, but then also this is what we want to do too, is what you've done has just been an incredible journey. We just kind of want to get into that. So before we get into the fireman journey and all that, let's talk about growing up as a kid. Grew up in Anderson, correct? Did you always live in Anderson, or were you a transplant?
No, I lived in Anderson all my life, and sans 8 years in the military. So I did 8 years out in Tucson, Arizona, but I was here all my life. I started off at Barabille Place, off of Rose Tree, and all that back in that area. I used to listen to the firehouse sirens going off back in the days. So grew up on Barabille. Then we moved over to Berline Hills Court by Wilson School, and I'll get to a point here in a second. And then we moved over to Watch Hill. So I've lived here all my life, but in numerous places, which afforded me the opportunity to get to know so many more people.
I went to
Turpin Middle School, 6th, 7th, and 8th. So, and then I moved to Anderson.
Good move.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wait a minute, where'd you go to middle school?
Turpin Middle School.
Really?
Well, because that'd be Wilson, right?
Mercer.
I know, but isn't Wilson part of Turpin, right? So if you would have went there, it would have been
in that district. Yeah,
so correct.
I did go 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and that's when I went to Anderson. As I came up, I realized that I kind of had two high schools, because I had just as many friends from Turpin as I did here. So I've always counted that as a blessing,
right?
Being here at Anderson. So I lived here all my life except for the military, and we've lived in different locations throughout Anderson, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's the story.
Yeah, it's awesome just to hear all the stories growing up, and not knowing that I had no clue that you lived that many different places.
That wasn't even all. Woodland. We lived on Woodland Drive.
So you've moved that many times in Anderson?
Yes.
I mean, you don't hear, honestly, you don't really hear that a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, we moved twice, right? We lived on Lindenwood Lane and then Clemson.
Yeah.
I don't remember too many people, probably besides my wife, because I know that her family moved a lot.
Yeah. So, but, it was family things, and stuff that you end up moving. I mean, at that age, we don't care. Right. I was in high school. I had I had the run of the mill. So
Yeah.
All right, we'll talk about Turpin Middle School, because we've talked to a lot of people that have gone to Anderson Middle School and some of the old teachers and things of that nature. But talk about Turpin Middle School and what that time frame was like.
That time frame was awesome. It was such a fun place to go. It was newer back then.
Right.
And I actually have, Lori Crawford, Robin Anderson, a number of friends from that era that I talked to, not regularly, but I still see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but going there, it was right during the change with Anderson becoming Turpin.
Yeah.
And everybody so there's a lot of haggling back and forth. But I went to school with Jim Laritz.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Jim and I were good buddies back in the day, and then he comes up and World Series.
Yeah, we interviewed him.
Right. Yeah. Well, you absolutely have to. But what to tell you about it, the best way I can is that having the ability to meet everybody, have those friends, and I didn't realize it back then because you were just idiots, We're kids.
Right. Yeah.
But I didn't realize what an effect it would have on my life and how many people I would know. That's what makes it home.
It is.
And it was a great school. But moving to Anderson was seamless.
Yeah. That's great.
I went to Maddox.
Yeah.
So Amy Atzel and I still talk. We were in elementary school together.
Wow.
So you went to Wilson. You said Maddox. Turpin Middle School.
And Anderson.
And then Anderson. Man.
Wow. Do you remember any legendary teachers or coaches from Turpin Middle School?
To see the Turpin Middle School, Mr. Neiman. He was
Jim Neiman.
Neiman.
He was at Turpin then.
He was at Anderson too.
Yeah.
Because he coached us, we had him in middle school.
Yeah. He was a baseball coach at some point. Yeah. Okay.
He must have done both.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So and you reach back. I mean, not to get too far ahead, but looking back when I would go to games or go to school festivities or whatever in official capacity, they'd see me in my uniform and they'd kind of take a double take and hey, wait a minute, you're little Freddie Buop? I thought you were in jail.
I gave you detention.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
Exactly. So
all right, so you get to high school and you're going to Anderson. So I mean, I can only imagine there's a little bit of nervousness, going from Turpin Middle School to Anderson, but you might have known some people at that point. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. And you hit it right on the head. It was, afterwards, looking back, it's awesome, but going in, when you're at that age and everything's changing. It was pretty intimidating going to a brand new school after having all those friends, but it took no time. I was roomed with Frank Brandy and Tom Brenneman. So I spent 4 years with them every day in the morning. So it worked out real well, and the soccer team was better than Turpin, so I like that. So
you went from the air conditioned to no air conditioning.
That was huge. I'm not good. You don't think that. You don't think about that. So that was definitely huge. So, but I'm sure your listeners out there and viewers, they get a sense of what we're talking about when it comes to this community. And my wife is Kathy, who I met in Tucson and married. You brought her back here 30 years ago. She's still to this day is an amazement of the number of people that are still together as friends. It's like, well, how do you know Todd Franz? I said, well, he's my next door neighbor, my best friend when I was 5 years old. And she's like, oh my God, and we still go to parties and I still see you. I remember you and your brothers from high school. So, you can't beat it.
No,
you just can't beat it.
It really is amazing because we've tried to, I can't really pinpoint I kind of remember, I thought it was more freshman year, but you were saying it was more 8th grade year.
What's that?
Me and you.
Oh, yeah.
I was thinking it was more freshman year.
Yeah.
But it might have been 8th grade. I don't know.
Yeah.
But think about that though. We're getting ready to have our 40-year reunion.
I know.
It's just nuts that we've been friends that long.
In this day and age, it is because both my daughters, one lives in Charlotte, Charleston, another in Chicago, but they just did not. And they moved away, So and they have their close friends, but they don't they're not going to have what we have.
Right.
I mean, I moved away for 8 years, but I came back.
Right.
And there was only one place I was going to come back to, and that was this place.
Yeah.
For one of those exact reasons, you just don't have this. And I lived in, being out in Tucson, nobody understands the draw it is to certain hometowns, because especially out there, they're all snowbirds and exactly.
Right.
So I wish I wasn't unique, but I think this area is unique because people stay, and it's not a small town. We're not talking Falmouth here.
Yeah, right.
So,
well, not only are you unique, Fred, but you came back, and not just came back to live here, but you provided an unbelievable service for your whole career. So, all right. So before we get to that, we're almost there. Let's talk about, because you became a soccer player for Anderson, I believe.
Yes, I did.
All right. So let's get into that when you got to Anderson and you started playing soccer.
Yeah. It was exciting because Anderson was a big deal. Let's see, Glenn Morris, I think it was.
Morton.
He was,
Glenn Morton.
Morton, thank you.
Yeah.
He was the coach back then.
Yep.
I tried out my freshman year, and I dribbled the ball around John Piacca and scored. And I ended up going to the varsity on my freshman year, which is a huge deal.
Yeah.
I lasted about a half a minute when I got up there, because I was totally outclassed, and it was a fluke that I made that. And John Piacca made me look like a fool after that.
Well, he made a lot of people.
But yeah, he sure did.
Yeah.
But so I did get on. I got on as a reservist, and we were always good. We always played together. All the guys that
I hate to say this, Fred, but wait a minute. What year did we graduate? Just let me throw that one out.
I graduated in 82.
82. Okay.
Yeah.
I just had to throw that in. I just.
82.
82.
The bitch of it is, it feels like just yesterday.
That's right.
You're talking a 40. I mean, a river 40.
Yeah. So, I know.
So there you go.
So how fun was that, though?
It was a blast. That's what you lived for. I mean, that was back then. That was it. That was, sports.
Yeah.
You wear your shirt on the day.
Oh, yeah.
Your name on the announcement.
Yeah.
You look back at that.
And soccer was more king then.
Oh, it was huge.
Only because we were so bad in football. It wasn't. I mean, we had Dean Tidball. He went to play for UC. Sure. But we had a few good. Charlie Lackmeyer, he was great, and they were good players, just not able to put it together.
Just didn't happen.
Everybody kind of filtered towards soccer. And that was a big that was the big transition year. That's when select soccer started, because I actually got into select soccer back in middle school, and we would travel to Virginia, Mississauga, Canada, and stuff. And now it's really taken off. I mean, you guys are well aware of that.
Yeah, it's almost ruined it, I think.
Yeah, well,
it's all watered down now.
Yeah.
It's the parents' dream. It's the same. Yeah.
It's the parents' dream. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's spending all that money.
It's a bank account. Is what it is.
I mean, we've
all lived it.
Yeah. I mean,
we've all lived it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So, Fred, you get through high school, and I mean, I can only imagine, talking about your high school days, of how much fun you had. As everybody say, those were the days. But how much fun did you really have?
I'm not going to incriminate myself at this point. I'm going to have to leave. I'm going to have to leave. Thank you. Well, some things have just been released. Some stuff.
Trump released the information.
Yeah, that's right. Executive order. No, but it was a great time to go through Anderson.
It was Yeah, absolutely. I was I don't know if you guys knew this or not, I was class most mischievous, so I'm really proud of that. Yeah.
That's shocking.
I had no clue.
That is shocking.
It is, yeah. Isn't it?
Shocking, yeah.
All right, I'm going to make this brief, but, and just so I'll admit it now, but I had a little tough time graduating. You needed
happens to the best of us.
We know what it's like.
You needed 255 credit hours to graduate.
Yeah.
And I was going to come in right at 255, so I took an extra class because I had an opportunity my last semester. I took an extra class just in case.
Just in case.
Well, that was it was Mrs. Tobias, and it was some sort of general, and Boy, that lady just despised me with Frederico.
Frederico.
Yes. And she would go, Frederico, ni quamas waswas, and I'd say caca, and she'd get she'd get so good darn mad at me. And so actually, I got kicked out of that class, so I had to finish all of them and pass them, and I got 255 credit hours with a 1.9 grade point average.
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about.
And later led a force of 80 people. In life-threatening situations.
That is good. That is good.
All right, Fred. So let's get past that because we could talk about that all day.
Yeah, we
about
need
teachers. After high school, I wanted you to explain how the decisions you made and where you ended up going.
Well, critical phase in life that we all don't think about until we get there. You know, unless you had college in mind, I never did. Okay. I wanted to be a firefighter from the day I was born. That's all I remember.
Okay.
I remember playing it. My parents have pictures of me. That's all I wanted. Period. The end. Wouldn't settle for anything else.
Okay.
So I started working for my dad right out of high school. He had a business, worked 6 days a week, and Brian Moore called me and said, we're going to bring guys on as a volunteers, because he was at the time. And I went up and I tested, and I got on. And I played volunteer firefighter. Went to paramedic school, did not do well, still in the fun stages of life. I'm talking 18, 19 years old. I wasn't ready for it. So
I get it.
I'm thinking, what can I do here to get prepared? I was getting ready to go to fire school, and I looked in the military, and I decided to go to the Air Force because they offer guaranteed jobs then. You could pick a job, say, this is what I want to do, and you go in. If you don't qualify or can't get the job or whatever, you have the right to leave.
Okay.
So I got down there, got the basic training, and they get you in you take an ASVAB test, and they get you in there and say, you're actually qualified for a lot more. I'm like, I want to be a firefighter. He goes, no, hold on. What I want to show you is this. I said, I want to be a firefighter. I said, sir, if you're not going to let me be a firefighter, I'm going to request to be removed. And he's like, okay, whatever. Signed me off and shot me on my way. So
I didn't even know they did that.
They don't. They did back in 1989.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when I enlisted. I'm sorry. I enlisted in 86. I got out in 89.
Okay.
So that was huge, and they don't do that anymore. Yeah. But it was called a military guarantee job.
Okay.
And there was 4 or 5 of us from this area that went that took that route. And that's basically how I ended up getting started, and I got the volunteer fire department with Anderson. Made my little runs, put the little red light on top of the car.
Did you?
Yeah.
Like Starsky and Hutch?
That's right.
The only problem is they don't show the light falling off and banging against the side of your car because you're going too fast. Yeah. So after I got on as a volunteer, I was just tried paramedic school. I was just looking for, I need a new way here. And so that's when I got in the Air Force, and I ended up out in Tucson, and I was a firefighter there. And then,
all right, I got a real quick.
Sure.
I don't know if this is a silly question or not. So when you go to the Air Force, is it like going to the fire academy to get you out? Because you said that you went to Tucson. So So were these classes or whatever, were these done to get you?
Yeah, I missed a small portion in there. You go to basic training, and afterwards they send you a tech your school.
Okay.
Mine was in Chanute, Illinois. Literally the toilet of the world.
Okay.
Nothing. It's just right next to Rantoul, Illinois, and that was up from Champaign. So that's where our fire school was.
Okay.
So that's a 2 months.
So that's where the Air Force sent you?
Yes.
Okay.
After basic training. Now
was there a bunch of you guys that did? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they're supplying all facets of the military were being trained there, but it was an Air Force class. So because they all have firefighters, and so that's you finish that, and then you get your orders to where you go. And it's a long course, and 12-hour days.
Is that like a degree then? I mean, so is it like
credits?
Okay.
I got enough credits for a couple bachelors. I just don't have a degree. All the classes I've taken throughout my career. Yes, Community College of the Air Force offers all that, which is huge.
Okay.
And so then throughout my career, I would come back to Chanute Air Force Base I went to rescue training and ammunition training, and they'd fly you back for that.
Wow.
So the education was second to none.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned so much out there. I was also able to work part-time while I was in the Air Force for departments in the Tucson metropolitan area. And that was even more awesome. So
wow.
Yeah, so that's actually where I got most of my experience was in those areas.
You had mentioned Brian Moore. So was he going through this whole process with you?
Brian should have been a doctor. Brian Moore should have been a doctor, but he ended up getting on full time with Anderson Township as a professional firefighter. At that time, I was out in the Air Force. Well, he was trying to get on Phoenix Fire Department, so he'd fly out, and he'd come down and see me. And the first time, he didn't get the job. The second time he tried, I had just tested to come back to Anderson.
Okay.
Brian was testing to get on Phoenix again, and we both got on, and so we crisscrossed across the nation.
Across the
He went to
country. Wow.
Phoenix, and I went to Anderson.
So what would the test be consisted of to get on at Anderson?
Originally back in the day, it was your standard. How many fingers am I holding up?
Don't say that.
Outside, yeah, I know. But back in that time, it was the standard IQ test. Which one fits best into this hole, and it was just basic aptitude.
But you had to do some kind of. I mean, I know you see some stuff now. I don't know if they did that back then of, climbing upstairs with the hose, all that stuff too. I'm sure,
all that
right?
came, yes, all that came afterwards. Yeah, you do training, but you don't. I mean, it's not that intense. It's volunteer.
Okay.
So this is back in 1982.
Yep.
We were only making about 900 to 1,200 runs a year.
Okay.
That's not a lot, and they had 3 stations back then. They had a full time at each station. Volunteers.
I want to get into that
would respond.
Okay.
So that's where we're at right now. I don't want to get too far because you look. I trying to stay within a chronological order where we're
that's
going.
What we're trying to do.
We're in the mid '80s right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so 80s on the fire department, about 36 hours of formal training, and then, there's a lot of things that we did then that were not safe because you just didn't think that way.
Right.
I mean, it was a long time ago now. I hate to say it. I mean, it's 40 plus years ago. That's a long time.
Was there a lot of I felt like there was a lot of volunteer firemen.
There was.
Back
there
then,
always was.
And now it's not that case.
Now it's more full-time, right?
Actually, it's completely full-time.
No
We went off, we tried the part-time, and I was right in the middle of all this, and the volunteers, we were starting, at that time, we were upwards of 2,800 calls a year. So now we're starting to, as time went on, we're starting to get increased numbers.
Yeah.
Okay, and they're starting to come more frequent. People, once in a while, you'd make a response, and it takes an hour or two out of your day.
Yeah.
But when you get busy volunteer departments, they're going nonstop.
Sure.
So it wasn't feasible. We weren't able to keep people. I mentioned the training earlier to Danny and how minimal it was as compared to the way it is now to get on as a full-time firefighter. It's significant testing, firefighting, paramedicine, and just general person knowledge, and it's a process. You go up against 30, 40 people, you practicals, you have a written, and you have oral interviews, and you have a psychological interview. So it's a good 6 months just to try to get on. But
that's a good thing, though, right?
It has to be like that. Absolutely.
So even back then, did they have where you're just a firefighter, you don't have the training to do the paramedic stuff, and if you were to do that, that could be more money for you, or was that all the same?
Originally we didn't get paid. We got paid, I think, $10 for a fire run, and you got nothing for a squad run. Okay. So all the old timers would hang around and wait for the fire run and collect their $10, So, but no, it was virtually it was no pay at all, other than, like I said, the $10 for a fire run, and you would just do your thing. And
how did you survive? Like,
I was just a volunteer. You got a full-time job. I was working for my dad 6 days a week. So and these
Just
are
waiting for the calls.
Yeah, we had a couple retired firefighters from city who were volunteers, and they were there all day long. But that the demographics and the way things happen and the way things grew here, it's been drastic. I mean, we'll kind of summarize that.
What would you say the big difference is in like firefighting from Anderson versus Tucson?
Huge. We were in Tucson. We were so much further ahead than we were back here. I was massively amazed at that. Communications wise was huge out there. We had such primitive ways when I left, and I didn't know that until I went out to Arizona and was on other departments. And I would work, I actually had a full-time job out in Tucson before I left. I don't want to get too far into that, but that's kind of how it, how it headed.
So, I mean, I know you said you want to be a firefighter all your life. So when you had this full-time job that you've mentioned a couple of times, was there any thought of, well, maybe I'm just going to start doing this full-time job?
No, not even. Yeah, it was my dad's business, and I went in because it was just an easy opportunity. I didn't know what I wanted or which way I was headed, so I was working. I had a decent paycheck, and that's what allowed me. Yeah. What drove my dad nuts was when I would finish my route, because I was driving a truck for him, and I'd get it done as fast as I can just so I could get out of there and go back and hang out at the firehouse.
Right.
That was a routine, and there was Bill Tillett and I and a number of others. We just hang out, and that's what it was about. That's people wanted to do it. We were really excited about doing it, and then eventually that kind of faded away, and the call volume got to the point where you couldn't do a volunteer system anymore because they're I want to say 5,000 runs a year. It's crazy.
Well, what was your deciding factor that why didn't you just stay out in Phoenix? Like, what was I mean, I know we talked about you wanting to come here to the community and all that, but I mean, you were finally a fireman. You're out there in Phoenix. Why come back?
It's Tucson, and there's no difference between the two except Phoenix is hotter. Yeah. Tucson, what was the question?
Just like why not stay on Phoenix or in Arizona?
I'm sorry. Why wouldn't you? Yeah, real good question. That was talked about, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't want to raise my kids out there. Yeah. We lived just north of Nogales. I lived right next to the Pasquayaki Indian Reservation. We had a nice house, but it just wasn't. We were very close to the border. And there was a lot going on. It just wasn't comfortable with my kids being raised out there. So I told my wife, if there's one reason we will go back to Anderson Township. And God is my witness, she says, fine, if I got on with Anderson Township.
Yeah. And you met her she's from Arizona?
She was a paramedic working in South Tucson on the paramedic unit. And I was volunteer, and we were friends for a couple of years, and then I ended up hanging out. Hey, there we go. So
look at that.
Yeah. So
like a sitcom.
And I brought her. Yeah, and I brought her back to Cincinnati.
That's what I'm talking about.
The best decision you ever made, Fred.
Yeah, I thought so too. Until the first year she's pregnant with our second, and Halloween came, and there was 6 inches of snow, and she came back from trick or treating, sobbing, saying she wanted to go home. She doesn't want to be here.
She liked
because it was snow. And it was just the worst time in the world to bring her back. But she got over it.
All right. So I want to get into the steps that you took through your career at Anderson in the fire department, because obviously you had a great career and you moved up, and there's a lot of changes I'm sure you saw even from the volunteerism that went away. But I mean, like, you talk about your first steps, the first few years of being at Anderson, and then what led you to move up the ladder from there.
It's just it was kind of the best opportunity that I could have had timing-wise, because the department was really starting to take off. Mm-hmm. I was still considered a member of the department because I was still considered to be in the military.
Okay.
Although inactive. So when I came back, I tested and I got on and started off at the Beachmont Firehouse, and it was a dream. Loved it, always did. We had some changes right after I started. George Faskey came in, and he was the chief. Then he retired, and they brought in a guy named Rob Brown. That was quite a change in what we were used to, because we were pretty much still kind of a volunteer department / full-time. We hadn't transitioned yet, so, and the calls got more and more. So about 5 years after I got on, we opened up another firehouse, and we also opened up some positions.
Okay.
So I tested for lieutenant, and I got the lieutenant's position. I was a lieutenant for about, I want to say 4, maybe 5 years, when an opportunity became available for a battalion chief's position in charge EMS. So I went ahead and said, let's get some experience.
Okay.
With some interviewing here for the future, and I ended up getting selected and became a battalion chief for the last 14 years of my service.
I was going to ask you. Wow, that's great, Fred.
It gave me the opportunity to do a lot of things that I had learned out in Arizona that we really hadn't taken up on here, because the incident command system and things like that were developed out on the West Coast, and I'm not going to get too much into that unless you're a firefighter. It's not really overly interesting, but it allowed me to do some things. It allowed me to introduce driver's packet, where they become engineers, but now it takes a lot more training and documented hours and studying before, as opposed to, you've been here long enough, now you can drive.
Wow.
And that mentality got changed over, especially when Chief Ober came in and said, Chief Ober was business. Okay. That's all there is. This is what we're here for. Mm-hmm. Let's focus on that. And we really just made leaps and bounds in our procedures, our responses, our training. It really was an open slate. And our system is so respected now at Anderson, just for its setup and the EMS, the supply, the inventory, the staying up with the standards. Those are all things that are evaluated every 3 years by the Academy of Medicine, so it really keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
So I was able to really instill a lot of good practices of accountability and making sure that you knew your job. That was my biggest deal. The first thing I said to the kids that would come in is, you came to us, you want to work here. Mm-hmm. Okay? So you always remember that.
Yeah.
We're here for you, we want what's best for you, but you're here for the township.
Right.
And don't ever forget that. That was my biggest line. So, but that was the best thing that I thought could happen, was the timing. I enjoyed it, and I was able to kind of fit right in and make some changes that were significant, and people and the personnel actually thought that was a lot of positive changes.
That's great.
So
yeah, that probably needed it too.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. It did, and I wasn't obnoxious about it. But I said, guys, I've done a few things out there that we're not doing here. I think might be.
Yeah.
Another difference, as you mentioned, was kind of huge when I worked out in Arizona. Mm-hmm. When I got out, I was working full time in a place called Tucson Estates Fire Department, which is on the far west side of Tucson, and there's just two of us, and we would be in a mobile home, and we had a little kind of carport out there that housed our fire truck. And we were a fire department, a fire district. It was 5,000 people, single, double wide trailers, and a retirement community. Maybe 2 runs a day tops, and one of those was to remove a snake from somebody's front door.
Oh my gosh.
But we also covered the wide area outside of Tucson, the no man's land, the roads, old Tucson, the places like that. And we would get calls, and we would respond by ourselves. It was my turn to go myself, and one night we had a call for a car fire. And they couldn't get anybody to go because it was in nowhere's land. So we said, okay, we'll go. And I took off by myself in the engine, saw the smoke and the flames in the middle of the night, a couple miles away. And I got there. It ended up being a head-on with multiple ejections, a vehicle fire. And I'm by myself with an engine, a small mini engine. And
wow.
I did fine. I get it. But, looking back, you're like, I just ended up going by myself on this,
right.
and backup is a while away.
I was going to say,
So that was the biggest difference, and was that ending up going on things in minimal personnel. They were very low personnel out in Arizona.
Okay.
Whereas here we're more 3 or 4 to an engine, although Anderson doesn't do that. So that was the difference. Learned a lot out there, but was able to bring a lot back.
Yeah. So how many stations? The ones I remember were the one on Beachmont and then in Salem.
Broadwell.
Yep.
Yeah, there's
Where
one
was Broadwell?
down there in Newtown. Not Newtown.
Yeah. Those are the three that
softball down their street.
I remember those 3. Those are the only 3 that I remember.
Yeah. Nobody knew that there was actually a third, and now there's 4.
Mm-hmm.
The Broadwell Firehouse, which was originally out of the highway maintenance building right there at 32 and Diebold, I think, or whatever it is. So, that's where it was, and it was only one person.
Yeah,
one person on an engine sitting down there by themselves, maybe a call a week.
Yeah.
Then we brought on, because Turpin area was kind of underserved. That's when we put the Clough and Hunley station in. They built the Broadwell station, and they moved in there, and then most recently, the Broadwell station closed. They combined with Newtown. So Station 22, which is down in the old vehicle emissions building.
Yeah.
That's Newtown's fire station run by Anderson Township.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didnn't know that.
Did not know that.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on. I mean, it's just not for you to know because you're not interested in it, and it's just not applicable. But, the Broadwell station closed. And then they moved once the Newtown, because we've been doing that thing with Newtown for decades.
Helping them out.
Yeah, and taking their paramedic service, then stopping, and then they're trying something else. It all got to be more of, this is our area. We want to keep our little volunteer fire department, and it's all about, just have service and let's take care of them. So now we got 4 stations, and what a very common misunderstanding with the general populace is the number of people at these stations. They have 2 people on an engine and 2 people on paramedic units.
Okay.
That's it.
For each station?
For each station. You're lucky if you can get a third on an engine or a quint.
Yeah, I thought there was a lot more.
Yeah. There's not.
You would think there would be.
Yeah.
You would hope there would be. There's a reason why we don't have automatic mutual aid with the city of Cincinnati is because they won't recognize our staff because we don't have 4 people on an engine. That's a union thing from years ago, and it's just the way it is. But we've never had 4 on an engine regularly staffed. We were lucky if we could get 3.
I didn't know that.
And then with overtime and, you have your minimum staffing. I don't know what it is now, but it was 16 people total for the whole township.
All right, I got one. It's kind of like, you watch all these shows like Chicago Fire and all that stuff, sleeping in there and doing all that stuff, the food and so is that, or the guys that are there, are they spending the night there?
Yeah, we did 24 hours.
like a little upstairs shack room or something?
No, it's not so much upstairs, but on the side. I spent many years sleeping in firehouses, that's where we stay. We did a 24-hour shift, and then you were off for 48 hours. So some departments have part-time where you work half a day, but standard is 24-48 in this area.
So would you have to rotate the firehouses?
I didn't It was up to the battalion chief of the shift. I did not. I felt it was important that these guys would focus in on their first due areas and be familiar and know those areas, as opposed to constantly being moved around and being proficient in none. And so, and the personnel like to stay where they're at. A lot of the guys didn't like moving around, and we had others that wanted to be at the busy station, which was Beachmont Avenue.
Sure.
When I first started, I mean, 5 to 6 calls a day.
Wow.
That was back when I started in, I want to say 91, 92 is when I started. Obviously
it's changed so much because Anderson has grown so much. I mean, that's obviously the reason. Because I'm sitting there thinking about that back when we were in high school, there was nowhere near the amount of subdivisions that there are now.
Correct.
I mean, so I think that's got a major factor.
Or businesses, for that matter.
Well, true. True.
All the different things that have popped up.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And that's what caused, and let me tell you something else. Nobody leaves Anderson. A small percentage of people leave Anderson because, I mean, say what you want, but it's a great place to live.
Yeah.
And it's clean, it's safe, it's well protected. Our streets are are taken care of immediately. So it's all about the fact that we're all living longer. And that was another thing that, I was concerned about as we went on in this fire service, was we were going to the New England Club 2-3 times a day.
Oh my goodness.
It's gone too far to the other edge of the thing where the fire service is being called out for, things that they're not exactly set up to be doing. And it used to be a life-threatening emergency, or an emergency where you just couldn't get yourself to the hospital. Well, now we got people that are sitting there waiting for you with their bags to get to the hospital. So it all has to do with the fact that nobody leaves. We're getting older, and everyone's living longer. And the fact that Danny hit it right on the head. That's why we had to get the tree saving, green space.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The reason why they went to green space is because they were afraid that available property in Anderson is going to be
pretty damn close.
Well, how long did that stay empty over on 8 Mile? And now they're changing that all over.
Yeah.
So, but that was the big reason.
I just remember when Dad was volunteering, early 70s, and it was just Beachmont, and then I think Broadwell was already there. But
Salem was there.
Salem was there where the car wash
is.
Yeah, that's where I started out.
That's very small.
You want to talk a firehouse? There was 4 of us in there.
That was the size of this room.
Yeah, it really was.
Sleeping in there was we had 2 bunk beds and not enough room for them.
Yeah, but you had the bowling alley right above you.
You did have the bowling alley until it burned.
I wonder who did that.
But I did it for so long. It stopped. It didn't bother me. When I was in the Air Force, we had 22 people in my station, with all the crash trucks and all that. And it was half military and half civilian. In case we got deployed, they would have to have civilians stay.
Gotcha.
In fact, all your military has half civilian and half military on the base. So if they get called out, they'll always have that civilians to stand by.
I didn't know that.
You had, you kind of talked about that thing that you had in Arizona about going out there by. Talk about something that's been that you remember that's been rewarding, like something that that you can remember that sticks in your mind, that you remember, like, man, I'm glad I did this. I'm glad I was a fireman, and just something
this is
why I did it.
Well, I think the reason I did it was because I couldn't think. There was nothing else in my mind. It truly is a calling. You say what you want, but a true real firefighter, it's a calling, and you don't want to do anything else. It's very similar to a police officer.
Yeah.
It's just a direct shot to that. So just getting in the service, being a part of it, going out to a whole other part of the country to do the same thing in education, that's what I felt was the most rewarding. And secondly, and kind of off track a little bit, meeting my wife and her father. Her father was a very very productive and well-known person out there in Arizona. He found a meteorite field. He was a town founder of Oro Valley. Just huge things, and that I felt that really rewarding. Believe it or not, just being part of that family. Wow. So I consider that a blessing. But I went to paramedic school out there instead of here in Cincinnati back in the day. And my program was 2 years out there in college. So and getting through that was huge. Just being able to live somewhere else for a period of time, just to say I know what it's like. As much as I would have loved to stay out there, this was the place to raise my kids. So I mean, the whole thing was awesome. I mean, I could not. I'm just so glad it worked out the way it did, and it's your plan, but it's not your plan. Right. You know, you'll take what you can get.
Like you said, you wanted to do it at an early age, and that's what you set out to do. But I want to see if you remember one offhand here real quick. Is I want to say 2011, 2012, somewhere around in there, you made a call to Clemson Circle. And it was the house that I was renting at the time. And to see if you remember, does that ring a bell with you at all?
I was at Beachmont and 8 Mile in my car. I knew right where Clemson was. Yeah. It was right around lunchtime, maybe around the middle of the afternoon.
You're right.
A big guy was there. I got there first. I pulled up, and there was smoke coming out of the garage. I do remember that.
It was a garage,
and we didn't want to get in the house, so we went in through the front door. I held off going in through the garage from the inside because it wasn't involved in the inside. But it was a quick knockdown. I mean, you guys got there. It was quick.
Yeah, it was just stunning to us because we just left, and we were in the car driving we were over on Red Bank Road when we got the phone call, and we couldn't believe it. And you know who found it was Anthony Rahill.
That's right. I remember you telling me that.
Our neighbor that I grew up with, he lived down the street, and he thought Zane was in the house, and he was freaking out.
Sure.
And he tried to, I guess, I don't know if he tried to go in or yelled or did something, and then we came home, and of course it was just.
I might check. I might have to see. I might have that incident on a file. At the house, because I got a bunch of files.
That was just crazy.
But it is crazy. But you experienced it, and yours was salvageable. I mean, you run up there and you see people's, I mean, the whole place is gone, or there's nothing to save, or we're pulling out an animal.
I'll be honest. It was if it wasn't for Anthony Rahill, it might not have been, because
that's exactly right.
He was walking his dog, and he called, and if he didn't, it could have gone on, and it could have destroyed that house.
That happened to me more than I would have liked it to happen to me, where I've rolled up on people, and they didn't see me.
It is the most, and I'll be honest, and obviously we didn't lose a lot of stuff, but it was still devastating, because all your clothes, stuff that you did have, and we had to get knocked out of the house. We lived in an apartment for I don't know how long. It's not fun.
No fun.
No, and that's not fun for us either. You see people at their worst. I mean, they're just simple things. Not simple in others' lives, but one day I happened to be in the area up off of White House, up near White House, and we get a call in that area for an unconscious person. Well, I get there, and there's a 29-year-old male dead right there in the driveway. Start CPR. He didn't live. And meanwhile, his wife and the baby and the other kid are sitting there, and she's going, he's just going to play softball, and he just dropped. And it was just like that. And that happens.
I know.
More than you'll ever want to know. Yeah. And my job was to know that and to deal with it, and it takes its toll after a while.
I can't even imagine.
But what goes through your head is, this poor woman, what is she going to do now? What would I do now? And what if this happened to me? And then running those through, you could drive you nuts. Yeah. But you see, you just see the worst, and you just got to be ready for it and be able to handle it. Yeah. So,
Fred, I mean, you obviously the great career you have, but you talk about the calling that you had. I mean, just like a a police officer, I mean,
a coach.
That's
a calling.
Well, it is, but it's different in the service call that you have because for a lot of people, when whether it be the going gets tough or there's situations they run away from it, you guys run to it, and you're there to help someone. It's not even a second thought. And I've seen you in action. It's just incredible. It takes a special person, just like a nurse. Just like other types of jobs. But for what you do and what you did, for your career, I mean, I know you got a lot of stories, a lot of things that you got to have thick skin to look past and get past. But the one thing I want to ask you about, Fred, is just being a firefighter and a battalion chief in Anderson Township during the years that your daughters were in high school, and you would go on runs. I mean, I'm like getting choked up just thinking about this because you're like wondering, okay, do I know them? Is it my daughter's friends, right, or what have you? And I don't know how you did that throughout your career, let alone the time that your daughters were in high school.
Thanks for bringing that up. No kidding. You got to talk about that stuff. You got to realize that that it is tough. And growing up, you're always wondering. As well as I do. All of us know how tough it is with the kids and how you worry. I did. One of Sarah's dear friends had cancer in his senior year in high school. And she was going to go see him the next day, and then Sean Smith, one of the battalion chiefs, calls me up and said we're at his home. I mean, he knew, and he's passed away. And I had to talk to Sarah. But, okay, that one sticks out, and that was a rough one.
Sure.
And that happened. And that happens. And I took Sarah over there, and she was able to do things that she wouldn't normally have been able to do had I not been in the. So that was a blessing in itself. Daddy, we've been in an accident. I don't think anybody's hurt. And I'm at work, and I'm like, Stephanie, what happened? Tell me what. And then the tones go off. For that accident, somebody already called, so I go there, and they had been hit. They had been T-boned. Sarah had her friend with her, and there was Stephanie's boyfriend. And of course, I get there, everybody's okay, but I couldn't tell you what I thought or what I saw or even how I got there.
It probably felt like an hour to get there. It was probably just a minute, but
it didn't happen. If it did, very seldom, but. Is somebody else's family member? I mean, I'll be able to deal with it at the time and take care of business. But when it was your own kid, you just go to butter. I mean, it don't matter who you are. You could be the toughest guy in the world. So it all stops when it comes to that. And you're always going to have those kind of things that stand out with you in your life, especially in this position.
Right. Yeah.
The key is try not to let it be the ever force on your own.
Well,
and before I forget, the Firefighters Festival.
Yes,
guys, that got to be way too much, and that was initially put on by the volunteer fire department strictly for the funding of paramedic units.
Right.
That was the only reason. All that money went to that, and it was year after year after, and we were able to buy a brand new medic unit almost annually because of that. So it was just wonderful. Now I ran that 3 years in a row with Gary Justice, the festival, and if I never saw another festival in my life, it would be too soon.
Well, for that
the
position,
other
I'm
side
sure.
of it, but putting those things on, I mean, and they were fun. I remember going when I was little. Of course, I would have done anything to go to see the fire trucks, but it got so popular, and it was just so big. We would be working that day, and people would start showing up hours ahead of time. Just walk around our pack, and so then we moved it to the orphanage and let the Park District take over, and then things just took care of itself from there. So now, with a whole bunch of different firefighters that have never experienced the festival, they're going to have it down in the Belterra. So, and I wish them the best.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
I might have to go.
Yeah, for the charity. It's for they got.
When is that? When is the?
I don't know.
Do you know?
I don't
It's
know.
got to be in the
But they
summer,
got
obviously.
some real good kids there. I say kids. I wish I didn't have to say that, but they got and they want to instill some of the old tradition and things like that. That's cool. And I always thought that if you want to work in a fire department, that you should live in that community. I'm kind of the oddball on that one, but I always thought if you're going to work in a community and get paid by the community, you should be working in that community.
Yeah, agreed.
Personally, so you're more vested in that. So,
Speaking of young kids, he might not even be there. I'm not sure, but a kid that I coached in football, I think it's a fireman at Anderson, or he was Eric Holden.
yes.
Is he still there?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, Eric.
That blows me away.
And you should talk to him about all his tats, man. He got all tatted
Did
up.
he?
But no,
He's a good football player.
he was on my shift in his entire career.
Good kid. He's a good kid. To me, he's a kid too. And we weren't that far in difference in age either. I say that because I coached freshman football and I just got out of high school, so he's not too far from me. But
Let me also correct you, Danny, before you get in trouble. That it's not firemen.
firefighters.
Firefighter.
All right, sorry about
It's
that.
firefighter. Okay.
Did I say that?
Yeah,
No, we all
both
said
did.
that. And in fact, I spent my career correcting people that were saying it.
Firefighter.
You're a
Remember that when we
firefighter.
close.
Yeah.
Fireman, because they're not all.
Everybody says that Fireman's Festival,
Yes, I know.
Firefighter Festival.
But,
So.
but see, that was okay back in the day.
Yeah.
All right, there's a lot of things that are okay.
Instead of a policeman, it's a police officer.
Yeah, we accidentally sprayed our captain with a booster line. He walked out the wrong time. We were just playing games, and he got so mad at us. And he walked up, and he took both of us, and he's poking his finger in our chest, saying, "You will never do that." I mean, this is Captain Pete Bussey, and you know what we did? We took it, and we said, "Yes, sir, sorry," and we moved on with our lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we did our jobs.
That's respect.
If you do that now, you go to jail,
Yeah, you
lose
get
your
fired,
job,
yeah.
and your family gets sent to a prison. It got to be a little. In the fire service, you got to have thick skin. You got to be able to take it. You got to be able to. And there are things you just got to let slide. You can't make a place you live in, sterile environment.
Right.
You have to live.
Yeah.
A lot of changes in the service when I was there.
I bet.
Incredible amounts of change, and I was really looking forward to retirement at that point.
I bet there's a lot of people that were afraid of Pete Bussey.
There were.
He was a big man.
He was a big man, but you just do your job. That's all what it was all about.
I got one. So, for me, my mental health has been, not the best the last few years, and mental health, I think, is a huge aspect of overall life for everybody, whatever career that they have. So saying that, having your brotherhood with your fellow firefighters, how did that help you a lot with the mental side of being a firefighter? Because I can't even imagine like the mental struggles you go through on an everyday basis.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you go see like some of the things that you're talking about to add more mental strain, to what you got going on. So talk a little, so obviously having the brotherhood helps out a lot, I would assume, but talk about that, like the mental part of being a firefighter and how taxing that was on you.
Well, if you would have asked me that question back in 1991 or 92, you get laughed at, because it wasn't considered a stigma, or it wasn't even considered a thing. But it was huge. You have to have that teamwork. You have to have those guys or the personnel be able to talk to each other. And none of that didn't start coming out until really halfway through my career, where you have critical incident stress debriefings and such. So they did start recognizing it, and honestly, it's something that needed to be done because you're starting to see more things. You're starting to be more active, and you need to be able to talk about that. If we had a particularly bad call, we had a family meet us at the driveway with their 2-year-old, and he was deceased at the time. They just didn't know it. He just died. Yeah. He just no reason for it. They woke up, went to get him up, and the father's holding him, and he looks at me and he goes, "How did this happen? How does this happen?" As we're grabbing him, and I'm like, I don't know, and I tried to console him. The personnel were hit hard on that one. I could just see the vibe. I was hit. So when we get back to the station, we have debriefings, and you sit, whether you want to be there or not. And, if you want to go ahead and not participate, you're going to sit in there because you're going to hear other people that are maybe going through the same thing you are. Yep. And you're sitting here seeing these grown men, start to open up, and it definitely helped. And it's absolutely it's a must. Right. It's a must. You have to have a cohesive. I agree. And you have one bad egg in there, and that can just really mess things up. Sure. And back in the, I say back in the day, and I say back in the day, I mean when I first started going on, you could handle those things, and you would have never known. I feel like that was, like you said, it was kind of the way it was back then, right? I mean, that was our generation.
You're
our generation.
But over time, you're this or that, whatever. Right, and that's what I mean. It's going to take, I mean, I can't even imagine. I'm sure you probably remember this when Tyler was, God, I want to say he was 5 years old, something like that, and I'll never forget this. I was sleeping, and I was working third shift, and my ex-wife at the time, woke me up and said, "Something's wrong with Tyler." And I said, "I think he's choking on his food." Well, it wasn't. He was having a diabetic seizure, and we didn't know it.
He was, how awful.
And I was trying to get, because I thought he was choking, and I stuck my finger in his, and he bit me, and his eyes were on the back of his head, and he just went limp, and I had him in my arm. I didn't know what to do. I didn't even think about the diabetes, didn't even enter my mind, because, and how I reacted and freaked out, and my emotions, and I can't even imagine coming into that, every time you're coming into something like that, but you're not only dealing with the person, you're dealing with the people that are affected by that too.
That was the hardest part. That was the hardest part is with the family, or when we stopped resuscitative efforts to save them not only thousands of dollars, but also the heartbreak of having to go up and knowing that we had done everything we could for them. And that's definitely the hardest part. I don't want to say my career-ending decision, but the decision that kind of put me to the point where I think I had enough was when my neighbor up the street, we get a call for a pediatric laceration, and the dispatcher came back on and just didn't sound right about this. Something didn't sound right, and she sounded hyped up a little bit, and the medic and the engine were on the way, so I went too. And it turned out that it was a little 4-year-old who stood up on a chair, fell back into a curio cabinet, and sliced her neck. And her mother called, and she was literally bleeding out. And and we got there, and we just called load and go. You just do everything on the way to the hospital, and we couldn't let her ride in the squad because she was too erratic, and so I called a helicopter and they made us up at Anderson, and then I had to take her to the hospital behind the squad, and then I helped her into the helicopter afterwards. When they got a heartbeat back, the child ended up passing away. We went back, and the place was horrific. It just was awful because of all the blood. So we cleaned that all up. The guys were really having a rough time, and then we found out that she didn't make it. Now I lived down the street, and so I was it. I was her last link to her child, and to this day I still have that link. We actually went to the child's funeral. I'd never been to a funeral from a victim before, but she had asked us to go. This was called a miracle baby because she had cancer, was told to end the pregnancy, but she kept the baby, and this was a miracle baby. So that was horrific. On my way home the next day, get a call, and I live in Summit, get a call off of Summit Ridge. I'm just driving by the freaking address.
Okay.
And it was for a shooting. So I stop, look back, and there's the house, and I go in, and a guy had full pulmonary fibrosis, and he had ended up ending things because he was miserable and suffering.
Okay.
So I get in there, and I go upstairs by myself, and he's still got a pulse. So I got to pull him out and start resuscitative efforts. The family's asking me what I'm doing. I said, well, I have to by law. Well, he's terminal. He doesn't want to live. And I know that. And so I get them out. So anyway, that's the next day that happened. I got home, still reeling from up the street. My wife, the whole neighborhood knows about it. Everybody was there. So after that was probably the one I didn't really want to have to go through that anymore.
Sure.
We all have our points, and I just, you just do, and that happened to be.
Wow.
That happened to be, and I had the opportunity to retire, and we were thinking about it, and that
was
the kind of catalyst.
I hate that's what it led up to, but I was getting ready to ask you about that, was retirement, and I know that you recently retired, and unfortunately that's a story that stinks about the retirement part of it. But how has that been an adjustment for you as far as being retired now? I'm sure I could be wrong, but I think that you might frequent a couple places that one of them is maybe where the Fireman's Festival is. Maybe, I don't know. I did. Yeah. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. First of all, I've been retired now for about, I think, 9-10 years now, and that time goes by.
I swear it feels like it hasn't been that long.
I know it.
Wow.
I can't believe I'm where I'm at either. I didn't think I'd retire until I was, until I couldn't do it anymore. Honestly. So
I can't believe that. I
retired, and I did all the things I wanted to. Went to Vegas and just had a blast. And but to say that you don't miss it, that would be a lie.
Well, sure.
You miss it, and
big part of your life.
Absolutely. I spent the last 20 years of my career with a radio on my bedside.
Yeah.
And, there wasn't rarely a night that I didn't get aroused.
Was that first week or night or whatever, was that really, really odd and weird? I'm sure it had to been.
Was that when I got promoted or when?
No, when you retired. Like that first, real, holy crap, I don't have the radio. Holy crap, I don't have,
You have no idea till the time you're done. Yeah. Until you don't realize what's on your shoulders. You have no idea. You just, because it's just accumulative, and you just deal with it.
Yeah.
Everybody does. And afterwards, I'm like, it was a huge void. I was salaried for 14 years as a battalion chief, and we carried the radio 24/7. We responded on our days off.
Wow.
We responded whenever the chief told us to respond, because we were, so you did that. And if we're to stop abruptly, it's.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I not sleeping has been a big thing. I was able to sleep afterwards,
Sure.
So it's.
Well, you look well rested, Fred.
I am very comfortable. I just became a grandfather recently, and so we have plenty to do. And
that's awesome.
Just Anderson coming back home back in the day and working full time with my department that I dreamed of working, and here I am, 60 years old, talking with a couple of little snot noses that were that came up behind me in school.
That's right.
And I know Brad. I know Steve's brother better than he does. I think from my high school years hanging out. So, but so it was a huge change in my life to say it wasn't. But here's the deal, guys. It's the fact that I love doing what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And
not many people can say that, Fred.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I still don't know what the hell I want to do, and I'm 57.
I got it. And I'm fortunate in that. I didn't register for firemanship. I just grew up. I lived next door to Todd Franz, and he's a full-time Anderson person too, and his brother Eric. He always played the policeman, and I was the fireman. And we played in their carport.
The firefighter.
Thank you. I got that from you guys. Okay. Eric retired as a sergeant with the city police, Cincinnati Police Department.
How about that?
So
from way back when,
that's awesome.
The careers you guys had.
It really is.
Well, let's talk about your family, because as we talk about all the time, any guy that's worked like you have has got to have a great wife that supports you, and you certainly got a great one in Kathy, and talk about your two daughters that are just beautiful and have great careers now. That you and Kathy have done an outstanding job. So tell us about your family.
I can't thank you enough for that. And that's family's most important thing to all of us, as you know. It was very beneficial having her in my life. She understood. She was a paramedic.
Yeah.
I watched her get tossed across a room in South Tucson one time because we didn't get the scene secured. She just a little thing. So, we worked a number of incidents together. So she understands. She understood that. Now let me tell you something, guys. I was talking to my daughter about that last week. When she worked for Rural Metro and I worked for Tucson Estates, we would work 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, 24 off, 24 on, then have 4 days off.
Oh, wow.
That was the schedule. Kathleen worked 24 Monday, 24 Wednesday, and then 12 hours on Friday.
Okay.
She worked as a paramedic at Rural. They ran out of hospitals. When I would work on a Sunday, 24 hours.
Yeah.
She would leave, drop Stephanie off at the sitter. I would get off work, pick her up, and I'd have 24 hours with her.
Wow.
Then I had to work the next day. I would drop off at the sitter. Kathy would come pick her up, and she'd have 24 hours with her.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
Wednesday, then Thursday, I go back to work. And then Friday she gets a half day. She's with a half day. So
a half day, but it's 12 hours.
Yeah. So we would go from Saturday to Saturday without seeing each other.
Jeez.
Other than coming up to the firehouse and having dinner, so they could do that stuff. Right. So but we did that for about a year and a half, and then she got pregnant with Sarah, and things kind of changed from there. But so very beneficial. She was in the fire service as a paramedic. Her brother was a police officer with Oro Valley. Then he was a pilot. Now he's with Customs or whatever. But everyone just kind of stayed in the family. And then we moved. And I told her if the only reason we would come back to Anderson is if I got a job with Anderson Township, and I did. And she's like, "What? I thought you were full of it." And I said, "No." So I don't know if I answered your question without getting, but both the girls, first of all, coming up with the last name, anywhere they went, they were marked. Buop.
Yeah.
Buop.
Yep.
You know Freddie Buop? He's my daddy. Whoa. Okay. And things like that. Kathleen had enough when we got back here, and she worked at Anderson Mercy, and she worked as a paramedic there, and kind of got out of the system. having the family, 2 girls, they thought they could get away with things because Daddy was gone. But they didn't realize Daddy had more eyes out there that actually he cared for. You don't have to watch my daughter for me. You don't need to tell me. So, it is what it is. And Anderson, the whole community, the fact I'm sitting here in Danny's basement talking about old times. How do you freaking beat that guy?
That's right. You can't.
It just gives you an opportunity for your mental health. This is what you love to do, Danny. I know that.
It is. I think more recently here on our podcast and stuff, I've been bringing up the mental part of it on a lot of things, on a lot of subjects we talk about, because I know it's affected me so much. I've had anxiety horribly. I've been trying to deal with that, all the issues that I've had throughout my life. And I feel like it's important for people to, on a podcast like this, to understand what you go through and what you've been through and the mental side of it too. And and for guys, like I've brought this up before, to not be afraid to talk about your mental health.
Right.
I mean, and I'm not embarrassed to say, I go to a counselor and talk to somebody because I deal with some issues that I deal with.
You should never be, but you got to understand something. We all need to understand something that, I don't know what our systems are set up to handle, but this isn't the 1830s where if you want some water, you go to the creek and you go get it, and you go, you're worried about the plow and everything else. I mean, this is social media. I mean, just the things we're going through, our government, this world, and to say that it doesn't affect people is an understatement. I mean,
just don't be afraid of it, I guess is what I'm saying. Don't be afraid to talk about it. I mean, he knows. Probably Steve knows everything that I go through, and and he can tell when I'm.
And you're lucky.
He can tell. I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can tell. He can tell if something is bothering me, and I feel like other people can too. I don't think it's just just him, but I mean he knows everything pretty much about me. But everybody knows. I can tell when something's bothering him. I can tell. It's just the way it is, and that's what makes this community so awesome. And we'll end it real quick here. Is that the other thing too? Is how everybody knows everybody in the circle and how everything goes. Like I didn't really know. Fred and Kathy, and really until Thirsty Thursdays, but I kind of knew that you guys were all kind of intertwined, but not. I didn't know them well enough until we started doing Thirsty Thursdays with the Reeses and the Knowles.
Well, you mentioned earlier, Danny, you were talking about hanging out at the Belterra. Now, let me tell you something about that. I'm glad you brought that up too, because I love to, Steve knows I love to gamble, and it's just fun. And but I was going, when I retired, I went down there a lot. Now, and I'll tell you what, it got to the point where I'm like, but I'm thinking, for all my life, all my adult life, I've had a radio by my side, and I've had that wait for a call, or always wondering or knowing that I could be called at any second now.
Sure.
And and always that apprehension in a positive professional way. And I just done. It just stopped when I retired. And I would go down and play once in a while. And then my mom and dad got sick at the same time. And they both were a couple years worth of, less than ideal ways to go. I'll just say that. And I took care of them, the entire time they were going through all this. My mom moved actually real close to us. Now I know our reason why, but and I was going through a lot, taking care of them, and I'd go home and I'd just stare at the walls, just go. So I'd run on down to play some video poker. Well, it was very much a coping mechanism,
right,
and not exactly the right one.
Right, no, I agree.
But I was also not breaking myself and keeping it within.
Right.
So, long story short, it serves its purpose. I see where it came from, why I had that desire, but I was also fortunate enough to be able to say, I'm done.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah, that was it. But it was more for mental.
I totally agree.
I didn't realize it, but my wife said, you were so much nicer when you were gambling. I'm like, I'll keep that in mind.
That's right.
Okay.
I think everybody deals with issues their own way, and you're good enough and smart enough to get out of it. So that's what's huge. But this has been awesome. I really appreciate you kind of letting everybody know the story of what it is to be a firefighter, and we appreciate your service here at Anderson as long life Andersonians. We appreciate it, and it's always great catching up with you. And we I think you and I see each other. Typically it's once a year, but I didn't get to see you this year at the New Year's Eve party because I was sick. But usually that's when I get to see you pretty much. And I used to see you a lot more when we did the Thirsty Thursdays, but don't do that anymore. And
all good things come to an end.
They do. But we really do appreciate talking and opening up about this to everybody. I'm sure everybody's going to love it in Anderson.
Absolutely.
Just to catch up. So thanks again for doing this.
I think you guys are doing an awesome thing here. This is just something I didn't know a whole lot about, and I appreciate that. I thank you both very much. You're very humbling, but you guys got to give yourself a little bit of credit. You kind of are ambassadors for this township. I mean, I don't know anybody else who could be. It's been in the Ellis family, the Albertson family. And when you talk high school and back in that day, that's the names that pop up.
We love it.
So a little saying goes both ways. And plus the fact that I've known Steve more than half my life.
That's crazy.
But anyway, so you guys doing a good thing, and there are people out there I'm sure really appreciate it and have a lot of pride in their community.
Yeah, they do. Well, thank you, Fred, for opening up to everybody and let everybody know. Steve, awesome. It was a great positive energy podcast. It's been a while since we've had one. And again, we apologize. It's just been it's been kind of hectic with your schedule, my schedule, trying to get guests, all that stuff. And basketball will be winding down here for you soon.
We're back.
And then we'll be back to doing more of the positive energy, Dingo and the Coach. Yep. And we're going to do a new thing with Dingo and the Coach. I think it's going to be fun. I can't wait to do that one. We're going to have really good topics and things to go on that. And then we got This Week in Anderson. We've got Stephanie Bruner coming up here. And this is pretty awesome. She's done a lot of stuff. Can't wait to been a producer at Channel 5. So we're going to have her. Stephanie Smith. Yeah, Stephanie Bruner Smith. Yeah. So bring her up. But
that's another thing, though. You just made a perfect point, is that we knew so many people with their original names.
That's right.
You don't even know half of them.
That's true. So again, we appreciate it, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So for Steve Ellis, Fred Buop, and Dan Albers, you've been listening to the Positive Energy Podcast, positive stories about positive people.